My father is rolling over in his grave right now because we were raised diehard Cowboy fans.
That's all right.
So, in order for me to wear this shirt, that means a lot.
That sure does. Well, that's a great sacrifice. I understand that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's show of the Tony Pruitt Show. And today we have a very special guest. He is a true American hero and an NFL legend. Playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he is a four-time Super Bowl champion. He won the George Halas Courage Award in 1975. He is a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers all-time team. He is a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers Hall of Honor. He won a national championship playing for Notre Dame in 1966 and won the NCAA Inspirational Award in 2020. He has also been awarded several military honors, such as the Bronze Star Medal, the Purple Heart, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. He is also an author, actor, and motivational speaker. Please welcome today, number 20, the great Pittsburgh Steeler, Rocky Bleier. How you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, that's quite a resume you have there.
Boy, you sure did. You did your homework. You start digging through finding all those little facts that are sitting out there.
Well, there's a lot more. I could have put it on there, but I hadn't had time for a show.
That's kind of you.
That's well, like I was saying earlier, I grew up a Cowboy fan, but I'm a huge Rocky Bleier fan. Ever since I stayed up late last night and I was watching the Rocky Bleier movie.
You had nothing better else to do? My goodness.
Well, you know, I want to be prepared, but I've always enjoyed that movie. I've seen it several times. My question about that is that how true to heart is that movie, or did they overdo it for TV, or is it pretty accurate?
No, it's pretty accurate. They did a pretty good job of staying true to the storyline, whatever that might be. And so, and like all movies, everything was factual, and maybe not in direct line, it was pretty good. I mean, they did a good job.
They did a good job. Well, they also use actual athletes too, right?
Oh, that's right. So yeah, my teammates all wanted to be in the movie.
I bet they did.
They did, and so and to get speaking parts. There were some that got speaking parts, and so that was a big deal to all those people. So rather than a lot of it, not a lot of it, but part of it was shot obviously here in Pittsburgh at the time, and up over at Three River Stadium, and get some of the workout shots and so on. But also then just you needed ball players, and
sure.
And so that was so they were all included to be a part of that. And then and then a lot of stand-ins for fans, and so a lot of the fan base here in Pittsburgh were able to come down and shoot the crowd scenes and so on and so on. So,
I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, they did a nice job, especially for Monday night made for television shows.
Oh, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let me take you back to the beginning. So in high school, I understand you were quite the athlete. You were the captain of the football team, basketball, and track. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Because no one else wanted the job. So it was.
I bet that's not true.
So high school, it was an interesting thing. And I think for a lot of athletes, when you play or get an opportunity, or when you start playing, so we're going back many years, obviously. So in high school, there's usually a as I always say, a catalyst. There's a coach that has a great amount of influence and an impact on athletes' lives and how they change and so on, and how they bring the most out of you. So we had a guy by the name of Torchy Clark, who was a grade school basketball coach, very successful in his manner. Was a brand new Catholic high school that was built. So now we've got to go back to the baby boomers that were just coming of age and going into high school. So there was an expansion around the country of new schools. And so in our area, there was a new Catholic school that was built in Appleton. Everybody else who went to high school had to go to St. Mary's over Menasha, which was, it seemed like a long ways away, but, it's maybe 10 miles. But anyway,
Right.
But now all of a sudden there's a brand new conference that is created for this brand new school. And all of a sudden you're the first grade or the classes that come in and be a part of that. So it drew from a wider range of students outside of our area that would come to that school. Along with them, a lot of good athletes that might have gone to a public school someplace else, but now come to the Catholic school. So there was a great amount of talent. Not that they went on to play in college and so on. Some did, but it was just a great high school, and Torchy got the most out of it. And in that period of time, as Torchy said, we lost. I think our record was we lost 5 games. We lost 5 games. We lost 5 games. We lost 5 games, including we were undefeated in football, and lost 5 basketball games. We were
Holy cow!
We're the number 1 ranked team in Wisconsin in football and in basketball, and so we were the defending state champions in my senior year, and so it was it was just one of those things, and because of that, you kind of get recognized for contributions that you made to the team. And so the team gets recognized, and then all the individuals. We had a wonderful athlete by the name of Kip Whitlinger, and Kip was a great basketball player and a football player as well. And so he was an integral part of the success of the basketball team and where we went. And I got to be part of the football team and the basketball team as well. But it was just kind of one of those magical moments of time. And then I get an opportunity to go to the University of Notre Dame.
Right.
Yeah, at that time, and from a scholarship, so unlike today, let's just say, unlike today, where we have a plethora of coverage. I mean, we know, we can find out anybody, just go online and, you can find out about different athletes, bringing up old movies. And,
oh, sure.
Sure. So all the information is out there. So going back, and I'm just saying going back, is that, we weren't necessarily, and I tell people that, I got some scholarship offers basically out of the Midwest to go on and play. And probably the best piece of advice I received was from the coach at Notre Dame, who was recruiting that area of Wisconsin. And, and he basically said, listen, you're going to get a lot of scholarship offers. And every time you go to some school to visit, they're, of course, going to roll out the red carpet, show you the best of the school, and hope you have a great weekend as you're there. He said, so you go to 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. He said, and then you got to make a decision on which one you're going to go to. Well, they kind of all run together, and one looks better than the other, or, then it's, he said, why don't you choose? Now, this was the sales part of his. Why don't you choose 3 schools that you would like to graduate from? Not necessarily play football, but graduate. He said, because anything can happen in between. You can get injured, you might not be able to play, but at least at Notre Dame, you would get a scholarship. And finish your education. So, but it's up to you. What school would you like to graduate from? So, as I tell people, tongue in cheek to some degree, like every good Catholic boy, then I did what I was supposed to do. I went to, I should say this. And I thought that made perfect sense. So, University of Wisconsin was one school I had to go visit because it was my state. My Boston College was another school that in Notre Dame. And so I went to those 3 schools, and then came back, and like every good Catholic boy, went to church, and prayed for guidance and direction. And then, like every good Catholic boy, I did what my mother wanted me to do. And that was to go to Notre Dame. So,
Thank you
so
for
I ended up at Notre Dame.
That's a good choice.
That's right. Well, it turned out that way, but who knew?
Yeah.
And it's like even choices that you make today, who know what's going to happen once you get there? It's a different level. And all of a sudden things may change, coaches may change, and so on. And in this case, they had a brand new coach by the name of Ara Parsegian, who had just come in from Northwestern University. And so that class was, of course, his first recruited class that he had at that time. And so interesting things developed in his success. So he comes in 1964, that season. Now, of course, just for your listeners and viewers out there, is that freshmen did not play on the varsity at that time. They did not get at all. They were just practice players specifically. And so you really didn't get a chance to play until your sophomore, junior, or senior year. So in 1964, two things happened for the success of Notre Dame. Was that the NCAA changed their substitution rules. Prior to 1964, you could only substitute 3 players at the change of the ball. And all of a sudden they checked that off and canceled that. And now you could have platoons come in. You can have a defensive team and an offensive team. Well, Ara had a plethora of talent that was developing already there that he couldn't use because of that rule. Now, all of a sudden, well, just people that might, we had a fullback at 245 pounds. And Pete Duranko was his name. And Pete was from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Wherever that was at that time, I didn't know. But anyway, so Johnson, and so they moved him to defensive tackle. He was like 6'3", 245 pounds, and boom, great athlete. And so they moved him to defensive tackle, and then they moved another person to an offensive tackle, and they moved this and so on. And so then you got a chance to compete. You got a chance to be able to be. And because we were his first recruited class, the backup team to the offense were all sophomores. And so we were the backup team. And so you got a chance to play and get recognized. And in that whole course. And so, and I say this to your listeners only because, you take what had taken place. Ara goes 9-1 that first year. We come back, we lose 2 the following year. We win the national championship in 1966, my junior year, and then in my senior year. But you get recognized. In my senior year, we lost 2 games. So you get recognized for that success, or people look at you, and then all of a sudden, I because of that, I get I am available in the draft, and I get drafted by my beloved.
I don't feel the same way about them today as I did back in the 70s.
Right.
I mean, I was a kid growing up,
Right.
Well, I understand that they named the stadium after you, and you have a street named after yourself. That's quite an honor.
It really is. I mean, for me, it's really quite an honor. But then it comes down it's like who you know. So the high school football, Xavier High School football, some years ago, were kind enough to name their field after me. It's the Rocky Bleier Xavier High School football field. So that is really, and so they named a street after me as well. So there's a kind of a story that goes with the street as well, because I got a good friend of mine who was really behind this, Kelly Cornelli, and Kelly was a year older than I, and Kelly was on the football team, but he's just been a stalwart young man, and then now lived his life in Appleton. But anyway, so he calls, he said, well, we'd like to name a street after you as well. And I said,
Wow.
that's wonderful. Then he came back and he said, and I say this because we have some very important people that came out of Appleton, Wisconsin, just so that people put it in perspective. Okay, Harry Houdini came from Appleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Senator Joe McCarthy of McCarthyism, excuse me, was from Appleton, Wisconsin. Greta Van Susteren, the journalist, was from Appleton. And Willem Dafoe, the actor, is from Appleton, Wisconsin. Edna Ferber, the author, is from Appleton. And
wow.
And as I tell people, and I don't believe any one of them has a street named after him. So this is really quite an honor. And so as my story goes, I got a call back from Kelly, and he said, "Hey, we're having a little problem, within the city council about naming the street after you." He said, "Now, if your name was Bart Starr or Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers," said, "I could have got College Avenue, which happens to be the main street in Appleton, named after you, but you're not." This was the best we could do. And it's a dead end. The street is a dead end. But anyway.
It's still pretty cool.
It's still pretty cool.
Well, do you go back home much?
I get back about once a year or so. I have a family that still lives back there, and I got cousins. So it's always nice to go back and visit.
So did you really grow up in a bar? Did your parents really have a tavern? And
That's right. So yeah, so we have a tavern. So we grew up. So mom and dad bought the tavern in 1945, and so it was on the corner of Walnut and Lawrence, a block from Main Street of Appleton, and it was like a rooming house as well. So the bar is on the first floor,
right,
and behind the bar was a little dining room where you could eat, and then behind that was a kitchen, and there was a bedroom and a sitting room, and so that's where the patrons or the owners lived back there. Mm-hmm. Upstairs we had 3. And so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms that housed gentlemen or men that were working, and so it was a kind of a rooming house, and which were popular at that time. Guys coming from the war and trying to find jobs and single, blah blah blah. And so we also had an attachment or another building on the property that also had rooms upstairs. There was a small apartment. Well, that's where we started. Then I came along, and then my sister came along, and then we took a couple bedrooms upstairs. But I grew up in my first 10 years, 11 years of my life, sharing the upstairs with 4 gentlemen that had rooms up there. And so, but it was just the way things were, so right. They would work, traveling salesmen, whatever it might be. And so that was our experience. And then in 1957, mom and dad remodeled the upstairs, and we put an apartment upstairs with 3 bedrooms. And that's where we moved as a family and lived above the bar. But it was, it was your normal life. It was like, okay, fine. This is just the way things are, And so
I would have loved that.
Yeah. So we met a ton of people. You were involved at the bar. It was, we served food eventually. So fish fries were big, at that time, and no meat on Fridays. And so fish fries were a big thing. And then we served steaks and on Wednesday, and then we had ribs, and on Saturday. So
that's the way it was.
That's the way it was. And so
Yeah,
it was a pretty good, yeah.
That's a pretty good, that's cool. That's a cool story. Well, let me ask you this, Rocky. If you did not play professional football, what would you have done?
Well, honestly, that's a good story. Sometimes I continue to think about, what would you have done? Where my life had gone if I hadn't, played football or come here or play, or what if I hadn't played for the Steelers? And so, part of the recognition and being a part of this show is a great deal of the success of the Steelers during that period of time and the players that we had and the direction that Chuck Noll had taken this team along with the Rooney family. So, it's not because of me. It's not because I individually want. It's because of just a combination of great talent that came together to be able to have that experience of winning those 4 Super Bowls in those 6 years. And so then that highlights what you are doing or your contributions. And so it leads to one thing, an opportunity here, another opportunity there, and all of a sudden your life changes. Now, so what would I have done? That's an interesting story. I don't know what I would have done. I have no, because I really think this because sometimes you go back and say, oh, what if, you have an opportunity. What if I went into coaching? What if I went to law school, became a lawyer? What if I became a doctor? What if I did, what if? But all those what ifs is that you didn't. And you didn't because it really wasn't your passion at that time. It really wasn't what drove you to do what you do today. And it's much like doing your show. What drove you to do the show? Well, there's a certain opportunity that existed, and somebody said, "Hey, Tony, why don't you do a show?" Or and you love to do it, and so
I love it.
and so you love it, and so that's what gets you into that. And I sit back even, at this day and go, oh, maybe I should have went into coaching, after I got done playing. Maybe I should have done, but you didn't, and your life goes the way it was either meant to be or the decisions that you made at that time. Exactly.
Do you remember when you found out that you got drafted to go into the war?
Oh yeah, very much so. So let's just take it in something your listeners have to, at least put that period of time into perspective. So the Vietnam War was building. So, we sent advisors over there in 1963. Our first troops didn't go over there until 1965. And so those are my college years, and so all of a sudden, some of my high school friends dropped out of college, they got drafted, and and then spent their time in the service. Some enlisted to avoid Vietnam, but it was there, so it was kind of it involved in your world because it was happening within your world, and so when I got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, as my little story goes, in the back of my mind, I should say this, in the back of my mind, growing up, being a Green Bay Packer fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we only grew up 25 miles from Green Bay. So the Packers in the 60s, were obviously the team to play. Super Bowls just, started. They won 2 championships, and they got the first Super Bowl, and so everybody knew the Packers at that time, and so you'd follow them, and then there would be stories about some of the players being in the National Guard or the reserves, going to their weekly meeting that they had to an obligation to do, and so it was just there in the back of your mind, and so on. So now all of a sudden. Well, you go through college, so you got a deferment. You don't think about it. You're just getting through that period of time of your life and wherever it's going to go. And so now you're drafted by the Steelers, and okay, fine. Now you're going to get ready to go to training camp and so on. And so, as I tell people, that at that moment in time in my life was the happiest day of my life, was after a practice during training camp. Bill Austin, who happened to be the Steelers head coach at the time, I was coming out of a meeting, took me aside, and he said, listen, we received this letter in the mail. It was opened accidentally, and it was my 1A classification. Now, my student deferment just had elapsed at that point. Now I am ready or eligible for the draft. And they said, we think you're good enough to make this team, and we'll take care of this for you. Whatever taking care of this meant,
right.
We'll get you, and I'm assuming, we'll get you in the National Guard or we'll get you in the reserve, and fulfill
right.
your obligation in that regards, and so on. So time goes on, so a month goes by and another month goes by, and I go, well, have you heard anything about this, this obligation? And they go, well, we're having little problems. Now, the problem was it was 1968. It was the height of the war over in Vietnam. We had over 500,000 troops over there, and the Reserve and National Guard were all filled by everybody who was smarter than I was to get in earlier. So they said, we're having a little problem. The general retired, the Congress got defeated, so and so on. And I said, okay, fine. Well, we're working on it. So anyway, time goes by, and so I'm in the locker room. And there's mail that's delivered, and one of the our attendants there hollered at me, said, "Hey, Rock, you got a letter over here." So I went over and picked it up and opened it up and unfolded it, and it's and it was my draft notification. Greetings, it said. We'd like to inform you that you've been inducted into the armed services of your country.
Oh my gosh.
I knew it was there because nothing had been taking place. I knew in the back of my mind, that things were unsettled. And then all of a sudden the reality was here to report the next morning.
The next morning
at 7 a.m. Somehow it was delayed in the mail. They're supposed to give you a week. By the time it got to me, in
oh my Lord,
at Three River Stadium. I go, man. So I went to Steelers, and anyway, so I showed up at and they bought me a day. They gave me high blood pressure so I could get all my stuff together.
I bet they did.
And I think I had high blood pressure. And so then all of a sudden, boom, you're gone. And a day later, so I had to call my folks, had to get everything packed, take what I could, have them make arrangements for them to pick it up. And I was off to basic training. And so just one thing led to another thing, and so, and to some degree, as I look back on it, is that to some degree, it was somewhat helpful, maybe not having to sit and think and worry about, my future. I mean, it happened so soon. Now all you could do is react. There you go. Okay, fine. I got to get this done, this done. Boom. I got to go down. Okay, I get sworn in the next morning, and then I'm on a bus, and we're off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Wow.
Then on to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and you go through basic training and AIT, and then get your orders to go to Vietnam, and you go home, say hi, goodbye, and fly out to San Francisco, spend a week there, and bam, you're off into the Vietnam.
Rocky, it looks like we're having some kind of technical difficulty here. I'm not sure what it is. But I'm going to keep going as long as I can.
Okay.
And if something happens, maybe we can finish. This never happened to me before.
All right.
So I'm just going to keep going as long as I can. Is that okay with you?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. So is it on my end?
No, it looks like it's on our end, and I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. So we'll pick it up we'll pick it up in another date.
Well, I'm just going to keep going until can you tell me about the time? Do you mind me asking you about the time when you got shot and injured in the war?
Yeah, not at all. No, so just to kind of set up that scenario of what had taken place was that, to kind of put it in perspective. So you have a battalion that has an area of operation. A battalion is made up of 4 companies. And so how we would operate is that in this area of operation, we worked off of 2, what they called landing zones, or LZs. They were on top of a mountain or top of hills. And this is where the helicopters would come in for replacements. This is where the heavy artillery was located to cover the area in which that battalion was covering. So the mode of operation was that you would spend a period of time, 7 to 10 days, pulling bunker guard on the LZ. Then you would be down in the field, going through areas of covering and search areas, and then you go back up on another LZ. And so that was kind of the rotation that had taken place. So we were up on LZ West, which was, and all of a sudden we got alerted that we are now on 24 hours alert. That means, everybody's awake. We don't know what's happening. As a private, I don't know what's happening, but all of a sudden we're on alert. Well, what happened was that there was a whole movement coming down from the north, a regiment, which is made up of several battalions, moving down NVA into our area. So we had some sort of, what can I call it? An operation with the Marines. The Marines were pushing from one side. We were kind of retaining force down here. They come into our area, and Bravo Company, I was with Charlie Company, happened to be in the field. Well, they ran into a firefight, and so now there's a big firefight going on between the NVA regiment and company. We're flown in to help give them support. By the time we got to them late at night, once the fighting had been done, our responsibility is trying to get them out of that hot spot as best we possibly can. There were helicopters that picked up the wounded and some of the dead personnel out of there. Now we're moving. There's about 5 U.S. military soldiers that were dead. We're carrying them out. We're just moving everything out. We run into another firefight late at night. We leave the bodies. That was the command, and we'll come back and pick them up 2 days later. So that was our mission. Now 2 days later, we're moving back into that area where we had left the bodies, to retrieve the bodies and pull them out. And so we were coming out of a wooded area into an open rice paddy. And so we were reinforced. We were just a reinforced platoon to be able to do that. And that platoon is about 32 guys, 35 guys at the time. And so we're coming out of this wooded area onto an open rice paddy, and our point man saw a movement across the berm, and there's an excitement, hollered gook gook, shots broke the stillness. And they started to run, and he started to chasing them, pulling everybody out in the rice paddies when a machine gun started to level the area. So bodies were diving, left and right into those. And the rice paddies were full. They were kind of empty at that time, so they were dry and empty. Well, crawled up to the front of that rice paddy and rolled over. So my responsibility, I was a grenadier, so I carried a grenade launcher, which was like a sawed-off shotgun, a one-shot deal. And the machine guns was maybe a couple hundred yards up on the hillside. And I could see where it was, and so my responsibility was to get some firepower on that machine gun. So I rolled over my side, breached that grenade when I got hit the first time. And Then we were in a firefight. I moved off to the side, got enough firepower on that position to at least quiet it. There were 4 guys who were pinned down and in the race paddy in front of us, and so they were able to get out of there safely and draw back. But now, and so we pulled back out of that race paddy, and then they probed our perimeter again, following us back into the wooded area, in which I got hit with a grenade the second time, and it blew up through my right foot, both my legs, and
oh my gosh!
So that's what took place, or the reason that it took place, and so we had a big firefight that had taken place, and all of a sudden they retreated. I don't know why they retreated. Either wounded or killed, or maybe commanding officer, but they just pulled away, and we were able to. And we had a reinforced platoon that came in again to get us out. So our rescuers, walking wounded, half my unit was either dead or wounded, and so
wow.
So we got out of that, and so that's what took place.
Wow. Well, after that happened, surely you thought your career was over. What made you have the attitude that you were going to absolutely make a comeback?
Well, I think, part of my attitude was in direct correlation to the injuries that I received. But it's like injuries that we all receive. I think one of the examples I was using was the fact that, we all have injuries growing up, playing in the backyard, playing organized sports of one nature or another. And there's kind of a lesson that you learn is that you get hurt and it hurts, but it kind of heals, and ultimately you're back playing, whether it be in the backyard or on the streets or in organized sports or whatever it is. And it becomes that kind of a process. So in my mind, it was still that, I didn't lose anything. I didn't lose an arm. I didn't lose a leg, damaged as it may be. So it's just going to take a period of time to have that heal and see where it goes. I think along the way as well is that you need to have some support. And so I got support from the people they counted the most, which was like the Rooney family. I think I made mention the fact that when I was in the hospital, I got a postcard from Mr. Rooney, and it said, "Rock, team's not doing well. We need you."
Right.
Well, they didn't need me, but being the family that they are, so they're a very caring kind of family. I remember writing another postcard back to the chief later on, said that I would like to come back and try out during training camp. And he said, "I'll talk to Dan, and we'll get that arranged." So ultimately, my thought process was, okay, fine. I needed to do that. I bought some time. I was in the hospital for that period of time. I was in the hospital or attached to a hospital for 6-7 months. And because of that, I was like an outpatient as my injuries started to heal, but I also could start working out, because my whole drive or goal was just to get back to the Steelers of one nature or another. And so I came back then in 1970, and they let me go all the way through training camp, and so it took its toll. I mean, it did take its toll, and let's be honest about it. But the great thing is that they put me in. Ultimately, it ended up is that they put me in injured reserve. They gave me another operation that I needed on my foot. And so they bought me a year. They paid me a salary, and they bought me a year. The following year, I came back, and they made the developmental squad, or the taxi squad, as it was called at that time. And I got suited up for the last 3 games on special teams. And so, but they really bought me 2 years 2 years to heal, 2 years to get better, 2 years to hang around, and so you have to do something with that. So I was working out and getting bigger, stronger each year. And so then I came back in 73 and made the team as well, and played special teams. But, and I think the thing that helped is that they saw the progress. They saw my intensity or my desire to play, and I got bigger, as I said, stronger, and they could see those results. So in some ways, they gave me the opportunity. You have to do something with the opportunity, and who knew what was going to happen later on.
That was incredible what you did.
Well, I don't know, it was incredible, but it was that focus. We were talking about what would you do with your life if you didn't have anything else, but this is where my passion was, and this is what I wanted to do, and at least.
And that's when I became a Rocky Bleier fan, because everybody loves an underdog.
Right. Yeah. That was a big underdog.
Oh my gosh. I was a closet fan for years. I could never tell my father, but I was like going, yeah, I mean, but anyway, thanks for sharing that story with us. You played on some incredible Steeler fans. Y'all were loaded. Do you have a special Super Bowl memory?
In each Super Bowl, you have a memory, because who knows going to be there's 2 or 3 or 4, in the first Super Bowl was down in New Orleans against the Minnesota Vikings, and it was exciting just to be able to be there. And I had so in that game there was a play they put in especially for me. Not because of me, but to take advantage of a weakness that they saw in the Vikings defensive line. Anyway, so that was it. So the first Cowboy game, was a big game, and for us and so on. And then the second Cowboy game, it was even bigger game. But in that case, in that one, it was the fact that I was in a position to score a go-ahead touchdown right before the half. That it was a play-action play in the end zone, and Bradshaw threw it over my head, but somehow I
saw that
and caught that. Okay, fine. But the interesting thing, so that put us ahead for that game, and we stayed ahead for the remaining to win the game. But I recently, happened to see the statistics in the game. Time goes by and you kind of forget what you do in the game and so on and so on. And I wonder what kind of an impact did I have in me personally in that game.
Sure.
I went to the statistics, and my statistics for this was that I carried the ball twice in the game for 1 yard. I caught one pass and recovered one onside kick, but I made the cover of Sports Illustrated for that game.
That was against the Cowboys. What was that against the Cowboys?
That was against the Cowboys. Yeah.
Somehow I remember that. I don't know why that sticks with me. You dog.
That's right.
I made the cover of Sports Illustrated. That's awesome. Do you still wear your Super Bowl rings? And if you do, which one do you wear?
Well, I would have been better prepared. I have my rings. I don't have them right here in front of me to be able to show. So, I do, and I wear the rings. Well, because of being in a position to speak to groups and be out in public, and it becomes part of my presentation, because people, especially Steeler fans, like to see Super Bowl rings, or anybody or our fan would like to see what Super Bowl rings are about. So, so I wear the one from Super Bowl 13, the one I made the catch in, and not because of the catch, and not because of the it was against the Cowboys. I wear that one because it's the largest and gaudiest of all 4 of them. So,
is it really?
Yes, it is.
I'll be darned. I didn't know that. What kind of relationship did you have with Coach No and Mr. Rooney? It had to be incredible.
Well, it's the relationship. The relationship with the chief was different, obviously, than with Chuck. So, I mean, Chief was a gracious guy, and so the thing about the Rooney family was that they took care of football business. They weren't in. They didn't try to become coaches. So Mr. Rooney obviously had a presence about himself, and he always had an open door. You'd go back into the office space somewhere, and all of a sudden, Mr. Rooney would holler at you or go, "Hey, Rock, come on in here," or Bradshaw, come on in here. And so he'd go and sit, and he'd start telling stories. He'd start telling stories of old days, or he'd start telling stories of players, or he'd tell stories of owners, or being at the track, or betting, and so on and so on. And so he'd give you a cigar if you wanted one, and
Oh, yeah.
And so he was that kind of a person, and just kind of very interested in who you are and so on. One of the stories I tell was that when I was in the service, the Steelers were playing the Packers in an exhibition game. So they stayed in Appleton. That's where the visiting teams stayed, and then they would take the bus up to Green Bay. But they would for whatever reason, I don't know why. But anyway, so he says to his staff, and there's only a small part of his staff, we're going to go to Bleier's for dinner on Friday night. And so they show up, as my mom told the story later on. So they came in, and you have to understand, Friday night fish fries were big things, and so it was, packed, and it was a local place, obviously. So they walked in and worked their way through the crowd and introduced himself to my mother. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Rooney, geez, thank you for stopping in and saying hi," and so on. He said, "We're looking to have a fish dinner." And she said, "Oh, that's wonderful." Reached into her apron, pulled out a ticket, and said, "Here, your number's 13. You can stand by the bar. We'll call you when your table becomes available."
Oh, my Lord.
I tell you that in the context only because of the fact that, not too many owners would take the time to go and visit a bar of that. And so that was kind of the guy that he was in respect to his players. And not just necessarily me, but all of his players. He had that kind of relationship. Chuck was a head coach, and how can I describe Chuck? Chuck was like a professor, in the regards, and is that he was well read. He knew what he wanted to get accomplished or something, and he also was in a position that he knew that he had to make some tough decisions. So he couldn't be a player's coach. He wasn't buddies with the players, because he was going to have to either discipline them and or cut them, or and
Sure,
crush their dreams of what it might be, because that was part of his job and responsibility. So he was somewhat aloof, but still very interested, in his players. And so Chuck was a tough kind of guy no, he was never a yeller or a screamer. He would just set certain expectations. This is what we expect from you. These are the rules, whether you like the rules or not, they just happen to be because they come from the headquarters of NFL. You got to do this, you got to do this, and so on and so on and so on. He said, just, that's all know your assignments, do what's necessary, and so on. So he was not that kind of guy that would be in your face or kick you in the rear end, or, but he had this. He just put you. Terry Hanratty said, "How would you describe him?" He says, He said, "Well, it just make you feel uncomfortable." You can never feel comfortable around Chuck. Not that he was. It just he just always kind of had you on edge. And I think that was universal how people or players reacted to Chuck.
Right. Well, let me ask you this: how did you know when it was time for you to retire? What was the? How did you know?
It was this. It was we're getting ready for Super Bowl. We were getting ready for Super Bowl 14, and so let's put it in perspective. They get the end of the season, and then you get 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. After the championship game, then there's 2 weeks. Okay, before the Super Bowl. So the first week, the media have nothing to write about.
Right.
The second week, it's all about the teams and then going into the Super Bowl. But the first week, they have nothing to write about. So now they got to write something. And I remember one of the reporters from Pittsburgh here said, "Hey, do you ever think about retiring?" No, why? Well, you didn't start at the beginning of the season. There's some younger, players coming up. And there's competition, and you're going to the Super Bowl. People always think about, well, it's nice to retire on top.
Sure.
And just thought, have you thought about retiring? Not till you brought it up, but now that you brought it up, now it's on my mind. Maybe I should retire, and and then you start thinking, oh, maybe I should retire. Maybe you start, and it gets, you're getting older, and so on. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who happened to remind me that I couldn't retire because the movie Fighting Back on ABC was coming out the following year. He said, and you have to come, and you have to be there. You have to be playing while this is out, so we can get the maximum advertisements out of this.
Oh, really?
He said, so you can't retire, I go, oh, okay, fine. I thought, well, all right, I'll play one more year, and it's 12 years. It's kind of an even number, and
that's a good career.
So that's the reason why I put it off to another year. That's right.
Very interesting. Are you still in touch with some of your teammates?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a handful of teammates that live here in Pittsburgh, and you get to see. And then periodically, the Steelers will have affairs or functions that take place, and you get to see them when they come into town or so on. But there's a group that live here, and so we got golf tournaments, and we got things that take place. We get together and interact.
Good deal. And I bet the stories get bigger and bigger every year.
Well, of course, and we get better and better than we've ever been in the past.
You couldn't have gotten any better, I don't think, in the 70s. I'll be darned. So you're a very busy man. Tell us what you're doing today.
Today, basically, I'm in the construction business. I own a construction company. We're a commercial general contractor, and we do a lot of federal government work. So that keeps me on a daily schedule. And then I get a chance to visit the public at times and give speeches to corporations around the country. So that keeps me busy. Today, as a matter of fact, when I leave you, I have to run down to the Steeler offices. I get some footballs I have to sign for a business gathering on Monday that are in town. So that takes place. So today's kind of a full day.
Good day. Well, listen, the last thing we do in our show, Rock, is it's called the Fast Five, and it's 5 easy questions we ask our guests. It's all in fun.
Yeah.
Are you ready to play?
Let's play.
What is your favorite dinner or meal?
Well, you should ask my wife. Anything she puts in front of me.
Surely you have a favorite.
Favorite is that I love my wife's pasta. She's Italian, and she makes wonderful red sauce. And as I've come to learn from all Italians, is it's their red sauce. It's, their mother's red sauce. It's
absolutely.
So that whenever she gets around making that's true.
Sounds good. What was your favorite childhood TV show growing up?
Shotgun Slade.
Shotgun. Never heard of it.
Haven't you? And Shotgun Slade. It was a Old West private investigator, and kind of I drew a blank on the character. And who it was. But anyway, it was, so we had the, Walt Disney programs. We had Mickey Mouse show that, grew up on as television was evolving. But for me, specifically, one that I remember was that show.
Good deal. What's your favorite kind of music that you listen to?
All 60s.
A good choice.
60s and 70s music. That's, I go
Can't
back.
Can't beat it.
Can't beat it. That's all part of my upbringing and the music that I enjoy.
I enjoy that as well. What is your favorite fast food place?
My favorite fast food place in the it's in the past. Was McDonald's or Burger King's. Get in and out. Obviously that whole schemes. But yeah, so and their French fries, so that was either one of those two that are
can't beat it.
Yeah.
And the last question, do you remember the first car you had?
Yeah, the first car I had was a 1950 Dodge that
really
my dad bought for me. It was $50.
$50.
$50,
Oh my gosh.
When I was 16 years old. And so that was
$50.
And it had a kind of they had a standard transmission, but it was the first movement into like automatic. I could go from first to third, and not have to go through all the gears. And so I could go right from first to third and drive anyway. So that was
good deal. Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for serving this great country. You're still serving it today, I understand. And in my opinion, you're a Hall of Famer in my book.
Well, I appreciate it, Tony. I really do. Thank you very much.
And thank you again for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
And for those of you listening out there, thank you as always for tuning in to us, and stay tuned for more legends. Until next time, God bless and take care.